You're listening to The Resentment Dumpers.
Hello,
Hi,
we are back.
it's been a while.
It has been. We've been so busy. There's been so much going on, and the world is spinning at a rapid pace. But it's good to sit down. And I had a bunch of stuff on my mind. Like we started last time we were here, we were talking a lot, and this was kind of for my benefit too because this was such an epiphany for me just recently reading the book and everything. But the whole trust and resentment connection that was just like this big aha kind of moment for me. And so we were talking a lot about that last time we were here, but when we were talking offline about this, you were sharing with me something that I think would be really beneficial to, really talk about at length, which is there. Okay, you take it from here because it's 3 points that you describe what they are exactly.
Well, the Melfox method, there's some things that people are going to resonate with, that they're going to, just nod their head in agreement. Yes, I know this, that kind of thing. But there's 3 points that it's not really stated as such in the book, but if you were to do some kind of book review on it, there's 3 points that are unique
That's it.
with
That's the word.
that's unique with the Melfox method and the recently released book Curiosity Killed the Spat. And those are that when you get into a conflict resolution or a conflict argument, whatever you want to talk about, understanding what the playing field is, kind of like in tennis, where you want to keep your partner on the same side of the net as you are. Now that's unique because normally when there's an argument or whatever, there's two people and you're fighting, therefore your partner must be the enemy, right?
Right.
Well, they're not. The enemy is not your partner, or it shouldn't be. Your focus should be on the other side of the net is this little giggling thing called resentment. And that's what you both should be working on to resolving. So that's the first point. The second point is the reason why we put our partner on the other side of the net, which is, of course, egoity.
Right, and that's what I was just going to say that the, these tie in because when you see your partner as not being on your side of the net, it's because you're blinded or however you want to call it by this other thing that takes over, that has a great cause and purpose and everything, but it takes over and it creates that illusion, for lack of a better term, that you are fighting each other, that you're mad, you're upset, you can't see straight or whatever. We've all had that experience, which is one of the reasons that a lot of times we try to avoid conflict because we don't like how that feels because we don't understand it.
Yeah, we don't understand what's causing us to look at our partner as the enemy,
Right.
as the we're fighting them, as opposed to okay, you said something I didn't like, or I said something that you didn't like, that kind of thing, and just for that moment, they're on the other side of the net. But that should be just it should be a warning sign. I keep on saying that egoity is a warning, or it's just telling you that okay, there's something here that needs to be resolved,
So
like anything.
so okay, so this is the hard part, and this is the part that I think we're going to have a lot of people wanting to know. How do you do it? How do you bring them back to the other
Well,
side?
we can get to that. Let me get to
Okay,
that.
okay, I'm jumping ahead here.
Let me get to the third point, just so and then we can go back through the
Okay.
individual ones.
Okay.
And the last point is that the last unique thing, or the third, there may be more, but I've come up with three.
We're focusing on three today.
Right. The third one is the fact that when you do resolve resentment, when you do have your partner on the side of the net, sufficiently enough to actually work together with cooperation, understanding, respect, empathy, curiosity, all those kind of things. When you do focus on and remove the resentment, then the trust level goes up, like we talked about last time.
Which also creates that closeness and that permafreshness and all the feelings that you want to have all the time with this person that you've chosen to be in a relationship with.
Right. So in review, the first one is recognizing that you need to keep your partner on the same side of the net, the same side of the argument, and understand that there is a third element in conflict resolution. That's resentment, and that's what you should be focusing on. The second one is understanding what causes us to see our partner on the other side, which is egoity. And then the third unique part is that when you do get rid of resentment, that is the thing that brings back the trust and respect and everything in a relationship. So,
and that's the objective. Every time that you're setting out to resolve a conflict, well, and of course that's assuming that you are setting out with that objective.
Well, that is the thing.
Yes.
And that's probably, I don't know if that's a fourth point or it's actually
it's an important one though.
It's a the part of the first one and the third one, I think, is the fact that a lot of people argue and they really don't have any objective in mind. They're
because their egoity's running amok and they're running around with their hands up in the air and they're upset and they're in everything, and that's the thing, is when there's a purpose behind it, which is what the Melfox Method does. It actually, it's a step-by-step kind of, well, maybe not step-by-step, but you know what I mean. It's a method. You actually have a purpose, which is to resolve resentment.
Yeah, it's not really step-by-step. It's basically lessons. It's basically learning the elements of conflict resolution. And the biggest one, the unknown one, is egoity. And that's really the biggest one. And without that knowledge, we tend to either avoid conflict resolution. We avoid it totally, but that doesn't get rid of resentment.
No.
We avoid talking about it, or we talk about it to the point where somebody leaves the room, or it just adds to the resentment. And when you don't have a plan in mind, when you don't have an objective, when you don't have a goal in mind, then conflict resolution is meaningless. You're really not doing, it's not really called conflict resolution at that point. It's just called arguing.
Okay, so I don't know, I don't even know what the right word is, like some tips, I guess, or, scenarios that we can talk about, like for practical use when people start feeling a certain way, or, they've got an issue that they're dealing with. What kind of things? I mean, this is a loaded question, I know.
Yeah, of course, the biggest advice I can give is to read the book, is to, educate yourself on these unique new ideas as far as what's going on, what's really going on. And the more you understand egoity and its cause and its purpose, and that's the biggest one.
And you will...
The more you understand that, the more you will have that goal in mind and understand what the goal is.
Yeah, and you'll find yourself, when you're reading it, going, I'm nodding my head right now. You can't see me, but you'll just see yourself nodding along and going, whoa, because it will feel so familiar. It will answer so many questions about things that you've experienced your whole life, but you really never understood why, and you certainly didn't understand what to do about them. I mean, I'm just speaking on my own behalf here, but, I just thought that was just a part of life. You just fight with people and you get mad and you slam doors and you run away and you cross your arms and all these things because that's what you do. But at the end of the day, you never resolve anything, and the papers continue to mount and build up. And unfortunately, in many, many, many cases, the relationship just continues to deteriorate because of that.
Yeah.
And the attraction gets duller and duller because the papers are building and you don't know how to get rid of them.
Well, yeah, and the tip is, I guess, the biggest tip is understanding what's going on. And it's a constant adjustment, because you're constantly going to hear things, or your partner is going to hear things that sets them off. That sparks that argument or whatever. And without knowing it, without your control, it takes over. And you see them on the other side of the net, and you find yourself, arguing with them, or, doing very disrespectful things, whatever it is,
Yeah.
Either taking things out of context if you tend to be a turtle, or raising your voice or having this threatening look and cussing and
throwing things and
throwing things like little glasses of water and water splashes up or whatever. All these it's like and here you're with the person you chose to be with.
yeah.
You chose to be with this person and you chose to be in this relationship, and here you are doing these terrible things. But once you understand that, it's how soon can you regain control?
That was my thing. I was just going to bring this up, so you must have read my mind or something. But I was just going to mention the fact that what personally I still find really challenging is that concept. And since we're on this subject, I think this is you brought it up anyway. So, but the whole concept of how quickly can you recognize it and tame it that's a tricky one, because some people get, not me or anything, but some people get really caught where they are, and it's very difficult to see past the shell or the roaring or whatever to reel it back in. And it kind of reminds me of, I heard this expression one time about fitness, that getting out of breath is not does not determine how fit you are. It's how quickly you regain your normal breathing pattern or whatever. How quickly you can recover is how you actually gauge fitness. And that reminds me of the same concept of egoity, that your egoity fitness, I'm doing air quotes here, is the same kind of concept. It's very much related to that, where how quickly you can recognize it, pat it on its head, as you say in the book, and carry on in your non-egoity state really makes a huge difference in how you resolve things and how how long it takes, how much, effort and, distress is involved in it.
Now, if you're, we probably haven't talked about this enough, but if you're the sole person that is interested in this thing and your partner isn't, fear not. You can still resolve conflict and everything.
But don't you use some kind of analogy of that, like having one hand tied behind your back or something?
Yeah, you have one hand tied behind your back. It's like you're spending one hand fighting off the egoity of your partner, and on the other hand, you're focusing on the resentment. So it takes like twice as long.
Yeah.
It's whatever, but you can still get through it, but it makes so much such a difference when both people are at least familiar with what's going on. Because again, like we talked about before, if you don't know that it's resentment, that is the goal. Getting rid of the resentment, finding out the reasons for resentment. If you don't have that in mind, then it's just a matter of, well, I want to win. I'm going to show this person that I'm going to tell this person that they're wrong, I'm right, and everything. And we all know that. We all know that dynamic of just trying to be.
But isn't that part of what egoity tells you?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Well, and it's recognizing when, another tip is recognizing when your egoity gets evoked, or knowing what your tendencies are for egoity. And your partner can point this out too if they're familiar with it. Like, I have a tendency to be the lion. And so whenever I find myself, whenever I hear myself, whenever I regain control just enough to hear myself, or when I start to get loud, when I start to have that face, whenever I see my partner as such and such, boom, it's like, okay, that's not where I want to be. That's not what I want to do here. I know that I could really be forceful and try to win the argument, which we all try to do. But when I feel myself with the egoity going up, I know I'm on the wrong path, and it's almost like, when the fire gets too hot, or it gets too hot, then the thermostat, kicks in, or whatever, the air conditioner goes on or whatever. It's the same kind of thing here. It's like when you feel yourself, becoming egoitized or whatever, that's your signal to saying, oh, I'm on the wrong path here. I got to bring them back in. I got to regain the focus on the resentment. And that immediately shuts it down. Now, your partner may still be in a egoity state, but at least you have regained control.
Well, and I know another tip that I've heard you say that is very, very helpful is if you can actually get to the point where you stop and say, what belief is being threatened right now? That is
Yeah.
really helpful because it not only pulls you out of your, your state, your defensive state or whatever, but it actually forces you to look at yourself and figure out what started all this, what set this off.
Well, it gets you back on the path. That's a very good point, where it brings you out of egoity and then puts you back on the right path. As towards your goal. What belief is being threatened?
Because that is going to directly relate to the conflict at hand, right?
Right. So that's that's a good tip. Is just to ask yourself whenever you regain control or whenever you feel yourself becoming egoitized, just ask yourself or say it out loud. It's like a belief has been threatened. Let's find out what it is.
It is really helpful. I've done it, and it does, stop you in your tracks and pull you back to what, at least to be able to get, like Joe said, on track with what you're really trying to accomplish instead of just going completely off the beaten path.
Yeah.
So let's recap this. The 3 things. We've talked a lot about egoity. Let's talk about the 3 things, and then I'm going to do a shameless plug on where they can read more about this.
Cool. Okay, well, recap is, the first one is understanding the playing field. Understand that there is a third party involved whenever there is conflict, arguments, whatever you want to call it.
And there's an awesome, speaking of the beginning of my shameless plugs, there's an awesome illustration of this in the book with the ring, the boxing ring thing.
Oh yeah.
I love that because that really does. It really illustrates what's going on.
Yeah, it's kind of it's similar to the tennis net analogy, but it has a couple of boxers, going at it, and then in the third corner, unbeknownst to them, is resentment, just laughing
at them. They're, going, hey, I'm the one who's supposed to be getting beat up here.
Yeah, don't you know this is a tag team match? It's like there's 3 involved, but the 2 people that are in the argument, they ignore the third party and they just fight each other instead of working together to resolve and defeat the real nemesis, which is resentment.
Okay, number 2.
Number 2 is egoity, understanding why you fight each other in the first place. And then the third one is recognizing that when you do get rid of resentment, this is the motivation. When you get rid of resentment, that clears the air. That is what cleanses the environment, your relationship environment. That's what cleanses it. And then suddenly, magically,
you're on your honeymoon again.
Exactly. You get that fresh feeling again. And the trust goes up, the closeness goes up, the respect returns, and it's magical and it's wonderful, and I just wish everybody would experience it.
And we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg here, but we'll be back soon to talk more about this. And in the meantime, Curiosity Killed the Spat is available at Amazon.com. Just do a quick search, and of course we have links all over our site and everywhere to it, and we have the Kindle version coming soon. We'll talk more about that later, but it is coming soon for those of you like myself who absolutely love your e-readers and you'd rather read it that way. It'll be available very soon for purchase, and we will talk with you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Resentment Dumpers. Check us out on the web at www.theresentmentdumpers.com.